All right, now it is time for a segment that I am transforming over from something that I used to do on my channel, which was called Ask Mazique, and now we're doing it. It's called Ask Us Bro. And Ask Us Bro, this is really just going to be more rapid fire. Just kind of, it's this one question that we might get into a little bit longer, but this is just giving some answers. I had some actually these questions, some of them were left over from Ask Mazique. So moving forward, I want you guys to at me bro show and use the hashtag Ask Us Bro, and you can send us questions on gaming and sports, and we'll get into them. So the first one that comes up is kind of strange. I'll be honest. It says, what do you think the Celtics or Warriors can do to help improve their team? Or do you feel there's anyone that they can trade for, or somebody that they would be able to lose and still enhance their team? Like for me, like I'm trying to figure out how much better do you want the Warriors to get?
What else do they need?
Like who you want, brother? You trying to get a clone of Kareem
I mean,
and
they got
add him?
5 All-Stars and a former All-Star in Andre Iguodala.
A former NBA Finals MVP.
Yeah,
So, and
that's
as
3
far
years ago, wasn't it? 4 years
y-
ago?
yeah, it's been a minute, but still, I mean, and then the Celtics, I mean, I think the only real thing that they can do is Anthony Davis, but we all know they can't do that unless they move Kyrie Irving, which can't so I think both of those teams are what they are going to be for this season, for this particular season.
Yeah, you know what I think the Celtics can do is they just need to continue to handle Gordon Hayward's recovery
Hmm.
appropriately.
Hmm.
The Celtics do not have to win the championship this year. They are under no obligation to do it just because they're ahead of schedule. All right. The only thing they have to do going forward is they're clearly going to have to find a replacement for Al Horford.
Hmm.
They also have to figure out a tighter rotation and how to deal with the development of their younger talent. So the Celtics have some issues, but I don't think their issues are roster, except in the future, Al Horford is not going to be as good as he was last year. You know, maybe he'll turn it up in the playoffs like older guys do, but next year it's going to be a lot to ask. The year after that, it's going to be a lot to ask. He's going to have to shift into a reserve role or get moved. I love him as a backup center going forward. So they're going to have to figure out the five position in Boston. But outside of that, which obviously if they get Anthony Davis, then they're fine. But even though he doesn't love playing the five, deal with it. Just accept your championship. You want a championship, that's what you got to do.
Right.
But yeah, but obviously the Warriors, that's a ridiculous question. Some people think the Warriors are literally the greatest team ever assembled. So
Yeah.
there's no measurement for better.
Kind of tough there. But all right, so the next question is do you think that the new licensing agreement that, and this one comes from Dope D13. He says, do you think that the new licensing agreement that 2K made will with the NBA will allow them to acquire more legend likenesses in the future? I can answer that one pretty quickly. The new agreement has really nothing to do with legend licenses. Legend licenses are individual with the players. There is a retired or NBA alumni association where some of the players they can get licensed to use their likenesses through there, but for the most part, it's individual agreements. So that agreement with 2K and the NBA doesn't affect that at all. Let's see. So we got another question. This one comes from Raven. It says, "Do you think we'll see even more improvements to create a player in NBA 2K20? Will we possibly see more players added and improved renters to historic draft classes?" Um, I don't know, honestly. I think that when I'm just knowing where they are from a standpoint of where creative player and offline and stuff like that stand in the on the priority list of 2K. I think we were fortunate to get like a completely redone version of it this year. Um, it's a matter of fact, I had an opportunity to speak to Jeff Thomas, and he's like, dude, we read your article. You're one of the biggest reasons why we redid Cap. So I feel fortunate that that even happened. So I don't know that we'll see another one like so soon. I love it because there's still some things left out. You still can't put tattoos on offline creative players. There's still more things that could be done with face sculpting. There's still more hairstyles that could be added. I mean, essentially, we would just love for them to emulate the creation suite that's already in WWE 2K. So if we could do that, that would be great. I do think that you're going to see some improved renders. I've noticed a spike in improved renders this year for
Yeah.
players, and I
And
think
for that reason, I think you'll see it improve. I think the
Mhm.
team is going to add a few wrinkles. I don't. That's not insider info. You guys know we do the show with Tazar. We haven't asked him about this personally or anything, but I would say if you guys want to see that, tweet at 2K. Let them know. Let them hear you. Let them know how passionate you are about the modes that require creative player. We know they're always going to try and improve it for my career.
Mhm.
They want to consistently add more stuff for my career, and creative player for my career is a little better this year too.
Mhm.
So yeah, there's some stuff I want to see, and if there's some stuff you guys want to see, let them know. But I think as long as my career is there, the creative player will get love from time to time because they are connected.
They're connected. Yeah, not totally not a one-to-one thing, but definitely
Right.
connected. Okay, the next question says, do you think, I think this one also comes from Dope D, I'm not sure. It says, do you think the NBA 2K should go back to the old play styles that you were able to choose in 2K16 and before? We had more freedom and fun to make players how we wanted in those times, and those are the kinds of players you now see in the NBA. What do you say about that one?
Well, there's a couple of things here. One, I think people underestimate how good the characters are that they have access to. Some of the stuff I see people ask for, I say, oh, you can do that. The only thing you can't really do is you can't make a very tall player who's very good at dribbling because the dribbling packages are totally locked by according to height to balance for all of the competitive modes. But when it comes to my career, I think that there are a lot of really, really, really strong archetypes. And if you're playing in actual my career, I don't know what you want to be able to do, but I can't imagine that you can't make an archetype that can do most of that. If you make say 6'10 pure shot creator and you play them in that mode, they will be able to score like Kevin Durant. Like it just doesn't seem like it on paper because people don't account for the badges. They only think about the ratings, but the badges greatly increase your ratings. And for the most part, you actually have an advantage over NBA players when it comes to badges versus when it comes to ratings. So do I think it needs to go back? My question to that is really, if you are not satisfied with my career in terms of what you can make, are you either A, asking for more overpowered characters in the park, or are you asking for a better NBA experience? And if you are asking for a better NBA experience, why is create a character and player lock in my league? What's that missing?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. I personally think that um, especially in the NBA experience. Well, I think both in the pro am experience, park experience. I would like to just see the archetype structure just done away with altogether. I really do. I just think that you don't need archetypes if you make it more difficult to max out certain things. I think I shouldn't say do away with archetypes altogether. I think the archetype structure should be defined by players who are currently or have been in the NBA before, right? So Kevin Durant exists, right? So since Kevin Durant exists, there should be a path to create a Kevin Durant like player. It should not be easy. And it should not only, to me, just come down to grinding 70 million hours to get it. I think there should be some skill involved in order to attain that level of a player. But I think that should be the structure. So you should be able to make anybody who has existed before. Because at the end of the day, the majority of this is based off of basketball. The majority of your aspirations to play and all of those different things are based off basketball. It's based off some player you've already seen. So now, how do I get to that player? Or how do I create some little hybrid or will in my efforts to get to one player, I end up somewhere in the middle and become some other type of player that may be unique. But I just don't like that capping the system the way it is now, because I do think it doesn't provide for enough diversity when it comes to the players overall. But I think there's a lot of ways to approach this whole thing. But I think one thing that most of us can agree on is that the archetype structure as it is probably needs some work.
Yeah,
maybe,
I mean, I
you know.
think what it needs, honestly, is just a third archetype. And I think the primary, secondary, and tertiary archetypes need to scale.
Hmm.
So whatever you have primary, that's where all your plus 90, 95 skills are, depending on your build. Because your physical body is a passive too, right? And we see it
Hmm.
all the time in the real world. This guy has this length of arm, so it's more difficult for him to do this. This guy has shorter arms, so it's more difficult to do that, which is a generalization. If you only go to the best players in NBA history, you're taking the rare exception, and you're making it the norm in
Hmm.
in other modes, and making the exception the norm. I don't think that's the answer from a player construction standpoint. I think the exceptional part of it needs to come from the ability to perform, not what's written down on paper, right? So me and you could both make sharpshooting playmakers, but we're gonna play real different according to our skill level with that particular character. And the same thing with a post scorer, and the same thing with the pure shot creator and all that other stuff. So I do think that there's a bit more diversity than you're giving credit for. And I swear there are definitely archetypes in the game that can do literally everything. Do they do everything as well as the archetypes that are made to only do one thing? No, but that's the nature of competitive gaming. You have to make choices. And I think when it comes to the competitive aspect, people need to have to make choices. You can't just say, well, there's one guy in history who could pretty much, Anthony Davis averages 30 everything. So I want to make Anthony Davis, and then there's 5 Anthony Davises on the court. I don't think that's the answer. I think diversity and dynamics is the answer. But I will say, again, to those people, I hear a lot of people complain about this, and they say, I don't play Park. I don't play Pro-Am. I just play my career. I don't understand why, and we still haven't gotten to this, why you can't just do create a character in my league and player lock it. What's missing from that? And I'm not saying that to demand that you do that. I'm saying whatever you want that's not in that, demand that 2K put it in there.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. And that's always the path. You know, I think what happens though, a lot of times people get frustrated because they get upset because 2K is such a big game and so many people like so many different aspects of it that there's so many people screaming about so many different things about 2K
Mm-hmm.
that they oftentimes they don't get their primary concern heard, and they feel neglected or ignored because 2K didn't hear them talk about this or that, you know. So I think that's where most of that anxiety comes in. But yeah, I do think that the play styles probably need to be altered. The next thing is this one comes from Firestick's gaming team. And they ask, should owners of pro-am teams run their team like they are interviewing for a future GM position in the NBA 2K League? My response to that is I think that's a good idea because I think a lot of players who have received positions in the 2K League have been people who were in some level of leadership for a pro-am team. So I think it's a good way to think. I also think it's a good way to think for if you are a gamer, right? If you are a 2K pro-am comp type of a guy or girl, right? This is your thing. You love it. You play it all the time. You're very well, you're somewhat known in the community, and you know you've had some experience with the game, and you say you've tried to make it these first 2 seasons and you haven't been able to get in. I think that really transitioning your thought from I have to be a player to I have to be involved with the league is a very, very smart approach, right? So it's just like any other sport, right? So me, I'm 6'5". When I was really, really in shape, I was about 205, 215, right? I'm a good basketball player, but I knew I was not an NBA basketball player. You know, I love sports, but I knew I wasn't the type of athlete that could play professionally. So my thought was, how can I create a career or get involved with something that has to do with sports, but I don't have to be the athlete? And it's the same thing here with the 2K League, right? You got to think what's the next step. And I think that looking at it, like, because I happen to know the person who kind of runs Fire Sticks Gaming, so I know where this question is kind of coming from. I know that they've, gone for the league twice and didn't get in, and very good player. Very good player, could have easily been in, has a fantastic story. I mean, you would not believe this person's story. And I mean, you wouldn't really believe it. I mean, it's serious, right? But he is also a go-getter and a person who is really good and sharp with with marketing and branding. And he's making this transition mentally from looking at it like, okay, I went for this league twice, and now I'm running this pro-am team. And so now he's looking at getting in to a GM management or a GM position with the 2K League. And I think it's a really smart thought process. So I definitely think that that's something that a person should do if they're doing that.
Yeah, I actually, I disagree. Not because what I think you're saying is wrong, but I think what the 2K base needs, because the 2K League is only but so big. And there's only so many jobs available in the 2K League. And when I say the 2K League is only so big, I mean that in two ways. There's only so many people doing it, and it's also not that good. Like, as a Twitch gaming channel, it's not something that if you were part of a real esport, you would want to be a part of. It's only because the 2K community has not had an esport to this time that people are looking at the 2K League like it's the top of like it's the mountaintop. It's not the mountaintop. It's gutter trash. So what you guys need to do is you guys need to make your Twitch channels, your tournaments, make those as big as possible. It is a reality that some non-NBA sponsored tournament could kill the NBA on Twitch. And you know how I can tell you this? Because there are individual streamers who beat 2K League on Twitch and from 2K, and then there's streamers from other games who would have a fit if they had a tournament and had 2K numbers. I mean, a fit. Even if they were throwing their own tournament in some spot they rented for a weekend, just with mostly friends. There are people who could play an old fighting game that do 2K League numbers. So what happens is a lot of people are thinking in the paradigm because of 2K League, because of the 2K and the NBA branding. And I'm saying, grow your scene. Do what other esports do and grow your scene. And you do this by putting events together, getting the talent up, growing your viewership, growing your individual brands, and then growing your collective brands, right? I think that's what needs to be done way above trying to get some dinky GM job. Not that it's a terrible thing to work for that, but I'm saying, like, right now, that is not what a person would say is their best case scenario. It doesn't pay as much as you think it does. The viewership isn't what you think it is. This is a startup in esports. Don't treat this startup like it's Overwatch League or something like that, or Evo for Street Fighter or whatever. It's not that big. They don't get hundreds and hundreds of thousands of viewers. They get the amount of viewers that a mid-level streamer of another game would get. And you should be seeking to make your individual brand that powerful.
Well, I'll tell you, I don't disagree with what you're saying mostly. What I do think is important is to understand that everybody is not as ambitious, and that's okay, because not everybody in the world is cut out to be an entrepreneur. Not everybody in the world is cut out to start their own thing. And because what you're saying makes total sense. And that's the type of thing that I would think to do. I'm like, okay, well, you won't accept me. I'm going to create my own thing, and it's going to be bigger. That's the way I would think, right?
But even if you're just talking about management, right? And I don't mean to cut you off, but I want to get on this point, because it's not just about you as an individual. It's also about what you're a part of. So if the 2K League is running their tournament, right? And they're looking to hire people, they're going to hire people who have run successful tournaments before, even if they're behind the scenes. And this is the kind of thing that you're talking about doing. And this is what I'm saying is you have to make yourself valuable outside of it. You can't, not that you can't, but the fastest way to get to where you're going is not to seek value and validation from the company. It's to seek it outside of the company. And then the company sees that you're an asset, and that's your job interview right there. That's your resume. And you don't have to be constrained by what they feel because they know that you're not desperate to work with them, that they're your only shot. So you'll get more from them, even if you're not in the spotlight yourself. But you still have to build. And if you don't want to build, you are putting it totally in their hands. And no matter what advice we give you, it could not be enough, because at the end of the day, you're talking about only a few people in the world who can help you with your decision. But when you build or help to build something, there's many people in the world contributing to your success.
Yeah, I like I said, I don't disagree with that concept at all. I don't. But I think that not everyone has that thought process, and many people, that thought process would be a turnoff or a discouragement to them because it's not really the level of responsibility that they want, because it represents something more than because everybody's itch is scratched differently. There are some people who what they are striving for, I might look at it and go, well, that wouldn't be enough for me. That wouldn't be enough for me, but it's just fine for them. It's literally just fine for them, and they will be 100% happy with that. So I think that it's one of the things that I've learned is that I can't necessarily put my my level of aspirations on everybody, because some people, like, because you're literally, like, what you're saying is you're going for this job here with this company that's not even really doing that well. You're really more enamored with the reputation and the labels and the branding and all this, that, and the third. And much of it is due to your ignorance of the entire esports scene. You're probably not aware of how really big esports is to even know that 2K League is not doing that great from a number standpoint. So why would you shoot for this? Well, I understand what you're saying, but at the same token, there may be a person that says, well, you know what? I know that, but I'm fine with that. And this is what I want to do.
But no matter what they want to do, though, I would say then the answer is find out how other people are successful in esports. Because what the 2K League is hiring you to do is to help them build a successful esport. That's what your job is. You might have a different aspect of that job, but at the end of the day, that's what the job is. And you need to know how to do that. And the only way to know how to do that is to know how it's done. And you have to find out how it's done if you don't know how it's done already. So if there is any ignorance about how esports works and how esports get big and how tournaments are run and all that other stuff, you still got to find that stuff out in order to put yourself in a position to play a role in those things, whether it's inside the 2K League or outside the 2K League. So it's like, it's not about you being so ambitious that you want to start your own company, but you have to be ambitious enough to do the job. And that requires spreading your wings maybe more than you're comfortable with. And discomfort is often between you and any goal you want. So it is what it is. I'm just giving the best advice. I'm not saying what people should do. I'm just saying that that's what I think works most effectively.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, the next one comes from Dope D. Dope D is an active participant in Ask Mazique, and I'm hoping that he's as active in Ask Us Bro. And he says, should the NBA fully implement NBA on TNT, NBA on ESPN, NBA TV, and ABC in the game looking forward? So what he's looking for is TNT, NBA, and NBA TV and ESPN stuff for regular season games, ABC for the playoffs. And he's saying that this is something that 2K should really look into, because EA's license for NBA Live and ESPN, that link is ending next year. So I have to check on when that, just to confirm when when or if it is ending with EA. But I will say this. I think those licenses are largely a waste of money and a waste of resources. I think that 2K, EA, all of these sports video games could do so much more by literally creating their own virtual networks with their own actual anchor people and things of that nature. You can create the same level of presentation, right? And you can do things that can't even that these major network things can't actually even do because of whatever licensing and agreements or whatever. You can bring in your own like 2K used to do it with the old 2K football games and the old 2K basketball games.
Yeah.
They had like Dan O'Keefe or whatever, and it didn't bother anybody.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with you. It's about raising the level of presentation to the point where you feel like the way you named all those networks, you named TNT and FS1, all this other stuff, you feel like 2K is just another one of them. It's just in the video game world that there's no difference. Because I tell you what, with Shaq and Ernie and Kenny, I don't feel like a TNT logo would improve that experience for me. I think if the studio looked better, that would improve the experience, right? Like the studio's not, no offense to the 2K art team, but that's not one of their strong points. It doesn't look as good as the NBA on TNT studio with like the big TV in the back and the desk and everything like that. So, I think they just need to raise the presentation so that it is a virtual network that is of the quality of these other networks in as much as you see it.
And I also think it would improve access, right? So if I got Dan O'Keefe and whoever, Mike Davis, whoever, just some guys, right? Who interns or guys who are talented, who have done something like this in the past. If I got those guys under contract, how much more frequently do you think I could get them to come down to 2K Studios, to EA, to record new lines, to record new footage? We can constantly update this game because a lot of times you're working around these guys' schedules because they are on-screen talents. They are this or they are that. Well, what if 2K made stars of these network personalities because they were known from the game? You know how many people get recognized because they appeared in a video game? Like that happens, and I really think that, it's something that isn't that I think these developers and publishers, they really put this they put too much emphasis on these networks, some of these licenses. Some of these licenses just are totally unnecessary, man.
I agree with you on the company licenses. I don't agree on the individual talent. Now, I want to temper this by saying it's not that I don't think that there are some jobs that could be filled by independent talent, people who aren't working for that network specifically or a big network, but they're really, really good. I think there's some of that stuff out there, but for the most part, I mean, for me, if they got Charles Barkley, there's nobody better than Charles, right? Like Ernie is a beast. I haven't seen anybody on TV or, even YouTube doing Ernie's job that's better than Ernie. So Ernie Johnson. So, I think the top talent is the top talent for a reason. And I would say the bar for me would be if I'm bringing in somebody new that's specific to my virtual sports network, they would have to be as good as the TV talent. And I'm probably a little more skeptical than you about how many people are at that level, that they would not only be the quality, but they would overcome the feeling that we get when we see, David Aldridge in the game. You know what I mean? The authenticity that brings. When we hear Kobe Bryant speaking on guest commentary, like that's, for me, I'm like, oh, I forgot Kobe was in this game. That's awesome.
That I think that the actual athletes, and for that type of splice in, I think that works. But to be honest, Ernie is awesome, and there is nobody like Charles. But the point, the thing is that you're not really getting Ernie. You're not really getting Charles. You're getting whatever amount of lines they were able to come in and record for that one session that they did, or whatever group of sessions that they did. If you have a actual employee, a contracted employee whose job it is to come in and record stuff weekly, because this is what they do. This is what they literally paid Rachel Demita to do 2K TV all of that time, right? How much more impacting would it have been to spend similar money on somebody to be the in-game commentary team?
Yeah, my point still stands though. Like, I see what you're saying, but It would still have to be better than having what we have of Ernie's time and Shaq's time and Kenny's time and
I think it definitely would
the
be, as
crew.
long as you get a person. I mean, obviously, you don't just go get some bland guy who sounds like
Yeah,
Charlie
that's what I'm
Brown
saying.
suit.
I think the proof is in the execution of that
Yeah,
concept, you know. But overall, I think the number one answer is to raise the level of presentation so that there's more room for the talent to be better when you do have them.
for sure, for sure. This question comes from Paul, and Paul says, "Who is the better combination in North American sports, Popovich and Duncan, or Belichick and Tom Brady?" For me, this is no disrespect at all to Pop and Duncan, but I would have to give the edge to Belichick and Brady simply because football is traditionally a harder sport to repeat in and to have a dynasty. And also, if you look at the supporting cast surrounding those two, it changes or has changed far more than we talk Pop Duncan, and Pop Duncan is definitely a part of it. And their first championship did come with Avery Johnson, Sean Elliott, and David Robinson. But the majority of the things after that came with Ginobili and Tony Parker. And so that same core is there. Belichick and Brady have gone through so many different cores with the Patriots, with those two guys being the constants. So to me, if you're comparing those two duos, coach to star player, I got to go with Belichick and Brady.
I totally understand your reasoning because it's hard to compare the two sports. But what I will say is that as great as Tom has been overall, he wasn't always the best. He wasn't always the main reason that they won. Sometimes Tom was there and he held it down and he had big moments, but he wasn't always what we've been seeing since they shifted from the purely defensive New England Patriots.
I would say that was once.
What was once?
That happened once where he wasn't the man.
Well,
The first one.
No, it's not just that. I'm talking about the whole career. I'm not just talking about the Super Bowl winnings, but I'm saying like even with the Super Bowl winnings and losing in the Super Bowl, it wasn't always the Tom Brady show. There's a lot of times where it was, you could argue, the Belichick show, where it's just like he's just coaching out of his mind. The defense is playing this way. I didn't think these guys could play this way. He keeps finding, slot receivers who are amazing, and he doesn't have the big names, but they all play together as a unit. And then the stars, Tom Brady has had points where he's looked like Joe Montana, Tom Brady, and I've thought Tom Brady was the best quarterback ever for a while, before people started saying it. Not to be a hipster about it, but I just thought he had the it factor. But the thing about it is, as a quarterback, you can put up insane numbers, you can be clutch, you can manage the game, and you can win. Sometimes Tom Brady has done different aspects of those things, whereas with Tim Duncan, he was the best power forward in the game, MVP candidate for a large chunk of a very, very, very dominant career. So, and in basketball, he is 20% of what's happening on the floor, right? So, in that sense, because there's so much more that a football team needs besides just a quarterback, especially when that quarterback, he wasn't Peyton Manning, right? He wasn't always throwing 5,000 yards a season and stuff like that. That, like, Tom has hit that peak and been that guy. In fact, that's part of his greatness, is that he's been a guy who can put up good numbers, but he's also been a guy who put up great numbers. He's been a guy who can throw, who can dink and dunk and throw smart passes and just take care of the ball while, the defense and even in some cases the running game take care of it. And he's also been a guy that can hang out with Randy Moss. But I don't think it was like Duncan, where with Duncan, especially in his prime, I mean, I don't know how long it was. I think it was something like 20 years. If there wasn't a Shaq, Kobe, or Tim Duncan in the playoffs, there was only 1 year that Shaq, Kobe, and Tim Duncan wasn't in the playoffs. I'm sorry, not in the playoffs, in the finals. In the finals.
Yeah, but if you look at the Super Bowl record,
insane.
If you look at the same thing, if you look at the Super Bowl record and you look at it under that same lens, and you also then consider how difficult it is to get to a Super Bowl historically for one franchise, and for a pair of guys to have done it as frequently as Belichick and Brady have done it, it's really unlike anything that we've ever seen in sports, to be honest. I mean, put it like this. You don't hear anybody talking about, I'm tired of seeing the Spurs. I hate the Spurs just because they win too much. You don't hear people saying that, because from a frequency standpoint, it just doesn't feel the same. People are so tired. They're like anybody but the Patriots. And they've been saying this for like almost 20 years. Anybody but the Patriots.
The Patriots had a drought where they weren't in the Super Bowl for a little bit, though. Like,
I mean,
anytime, the thing is, anytime you can talk about the Patriots not, being in the finals, obviously being in the Super Bowl or winning the Super Bowl, you always can come back with, but it's different in football. And that's why it's a difficult comparison, because honestly, as a basketball team, you can't ask for a better tandem than what Popovich and Duncan gave you. Like, it really doesn't get much better than that, particularly when you consider overall winning, right? Not just the championships, which is what the discussion's turned into, but overall winning. And in football, it doesn't get any better than, Belichick and Brady. They're both the gold standard. So honestly, I think it's just really about whether you look at the numbers themselves or you look at the sport and what makes the sports different,
Yeah, I think I don't know. I think it's tough. Obviously, they Duncan and Popovich have had a great run, but I don't think that it really compares favorably to what we've seen with Belichick and Brady. It's really something different, but